Emily, a 28-year-old woman living in Chicago, USA, thought she had found the love of her life when she met Jake, a charming man 5 years her senior. The two met at an art event downtown, where Emily worked at a gallery. Jake, with his gallery looks and gentle care, quickly won her heart. After only a few months of dating, Emily felt like she was living in a fairy tale when Jake proposed to her in a kiss on Lake Michigan. Their marriage began with the admiration of everyone around them. Emily and Jake moved into a cozy little apartment in Lincoln Park, one of Chicago's most beautiful and vibrant neighborhoods. From the outside they seemed like the perfect couple, with Jake a successful business executive and Emily working in the art field she loved. Friends and relatives often said that Emily was lucky to have a husband as caring and loving as Jake. However, that happiness did not last long. After about a year of living together, Emily began to notice changes in Jake's behavior. From a sweet husband, Jake gradually became distant. He often came back, citing his busy work schedule, and hardly spent time talking to his wife. The loving words were gradually replaced by cold silence. Sometimes, Jake even showed annoyance at the little things Emily did, like the way she arranged things in the house or when she tried to start a conversation. These manifestations became more and more obvious over time. Jake was no longer the man Emily had loved. He became unpredictable, irritable, and often said hurtful words to her. Many nights Emily lay awake, wondering what she had to do to make Jake change like that. But when she tried to talk to improve the relationship, Jake only responded with indifference or words that hurt her more. On the outside, Emily still tried to enjoy her happiness in front of her friends and family, but on the inside, she felt like she was living in an invisible cage. She began to feel lonely in her own home. That feeling became more and more intense when Jake constantly tried to control her life, from where she went, who she met, to how she spent her time. The most obvious sign of the rift in their marriage was when Jake began to make insulting and threatening comments, hiding psychological abuse under the guise of suggestions. One time, at a small party with friends, Jake made a funny conversation with Emily in front of everyone, leaving her feeling ashamed and deeply hurt. After the party, when she tried to vent her feelings, Jake just laughed coldly and said that she was overreacting. Even though things were getting unbearable, Emily still held out hope that Jake would change. She comforted herself that it was just a difficult phase in her marriage. But that hope was just a lie. Jake not only did not change, but he became more and more distant, and with each passing day, Emily felt the breakdown of her marriage more clearly. With each action, each word of Jake, Emily gradually realized that the man she once loved no longer existed. The life she once dreamed of was now just a dream that had disappeared, replaced by a reality full of pain and disappointment. Deep down, Emily knew she had to do something to escape this situation, but she had not found the way or the courage to face the truth. Emily's story is not only about Jake's change, but also about the pain of women who have put all their trust in a wrong love. What she was experiencing was a wake-up call for psychological abuse, a form of cruelty and invisibility in marriage, but one that many people have, and are suffering from. After nearly 2 years of living in a marriage full of cracks, Emily still held on to a fragile hope that things could change. Although Jake, her 33-year-old husband, had become cold and often said harsh words, Emily still tried to believe that he could find love again like the first days. So when Jake suggested a short trip this weekend to celebrate their wedding anniversary, she did not hesitate to agree, although she was still mixed with anxiety and anticipation. Jake suggested a special place, Silver Falls, located in Oregon, where they had once had a memorable date. Emily felt a little comforted when she remembered the happy image of the past, when the two of them held hands and walked in nature, laughing and talking non-stop. She hoped that this trip would help them rediscover some of those beautiful memories. On the morning of their departure, Jake seemed different. He was quieter than usual, his eyes occasionally flickering with an unreadable restlessness. During the long drive from Chicago to Oregon, the atmosphere in the car was heavy, covered in long silences, only broken by the music playing on the radio. Emily tried to make conversation, but Jake only responded with curt answers. Her heart was gradually weighed down by unease, but she still tried to believe that this was a chance for the two of them to heal. When they reached Silver Falls in the afternoon, the beautiful natural scenery made Emily feel relieved. The fresh air and the sound of rushing water brought her a rare sense of peace that she had not felt in a long time. Jake seemed happier, as he smiled, the first time in weeks. He suggested they walk along the trail to the main falls. Emily agreed, though she was still hesitant, trying to enjoy the moment. However, as they neared the edge of the falls, Emily began to sense something was wrong. Jake suddenly stopped and turned to her, his gaze suddenly changing. It was no longer the warmth or kindness she had known, but instead a cold, terrifying gaze she had never seen before. "Emily," he said, his voice low and unfamiliar, "I can't go on like this." Emily asked again, confused, trying to understand what he meant, but Jake didn't give her time to react. With a sudden, violent gesture, he pushed her toward the edge of the falls. In that terrifying moment, Emily realized the cruel truth. Jake didn't want to fix it. He wanted to end it all. In the most horrible way. Emily's body fell freely into the cold water below. The impact of the waterfall left her breathless, but her survival instincts kicked in. She struggled in the swirling water, clinging to what her father had taught her as a child. Let the water guide you. Relax and breathe. After what seemed like an eternity, Emily finally reached the rocky shore. Her whole body was aching and bruised, but the only thing on her mind was the undeniable truth. The husband she once loved had tried to kill her. As tears mixed with the cold water running down her face, Emily felt the anger and pain boiling inside her. She not only survived the fall, but also found new strength in her own pain. Emily knew that she could not return to her old life. The weak, patient woman had died in the waterfall that day. From now on, she would live with a clear goal: to expose Jake and find justice for herself. She left the falls, step by step, despite her exhausted body, with more determination and willpower than ever. This was just the beginning of a new journey in which Emily was no longer a victim, but a warrior. After nearly 2 years of living in a broken marriage, Emily still held on to a fragile hope that things could change. Although Jake, her 33-year-old husband, had become cold and often used harsh words, Emily still tried to believe that he could find love again like the first days. So when Jake suggested a short trip this weekend to celebrate their wedding anniversary, she did not hesitate to agree, although her heart was still mixed with anxiety and anticipation. Jake suggested a special place, Silver Falls, located in Oregon, where they had a memorable date trip. Emily felt a little comforted when she remembered the happy image of the past, when the two of them held hands and walked in nature, laughing and talking non-stop. She hoped that this trip would help them recapture some of those beautiful memories. On the morning of their departure, Jake seemed different. He was quieter than usual, his eyes occasionally flickering with an unreadable restlessness. During the long drive from Chicago to Oregon, the atmosphere in the car was heavy, covered in long silences, only broken by the music playing on the radio. Emily tried to make conversation, but Jake only responded with curt answers. Her heart was gradually weighed down by unease, but she still tried to believe that this was a chance for the two of them to heal. When they reached Silver Falls in the afternoon, the beautiful natural scenery made Emily feel relieved. The fresh air and the sound of rushing water brought her a rare sense of peace that she had not felt in a long time. Jake seemed happier as he smiled, the first time in weeks. He suggested that they walk along the trail leading to the main falls. Emily agreed, still feeling uneasy, trying to enjoy the moment. However, as they approached the edge of the falls, Emily began to sense something was wrong. Jake suddenly stopped and turned to her, his gaze suddenly changing. It was no longer the warmth or kindness she had known, but instead a cold, terrifying gaze she had never seen before. "Emily," he said, his voice low and unfamiliar, "I can't go on like this." Emily asked again, confused, trying to understand what he meant, but Jake didn't give her time to react. With a sudden and violent gesture, he pushed her toward the edge of the falls. In that terrifying moment, Emily realized the cruel truth. Jake didn't want to fix it. He wanted to end it all, in the most horrible way. Emily's body fell freely into the cold water below. The impact of the waterfall made her gasp in pain, but her survival instincts took over. She struggled in the swirling current, trying to cling to what her father had taught her as a child. Let the water guide you. Relax and breathe. After what seemed like an eternity, Emily finally reached the rocky shore. Her body was sore and bruised, but the only thing on her mind was the undeniable truth. The husband she had loved had tried to kill her. Tears mixed with the cold water running down her face, Emily felt the anger and pain boiling inside her. She had not only survived the fall but had found new strength in her own pain. Emily knew that she could not return to her old life. The weak, patient woman had died in the waterfall that day. From now on, she would live with a clear goal: to expose Jake and find justice for herself. She left the falls, step by step, despite her exhausted body, with more determination and willpower than ever. This was just the beginning of a new journey, in which Emily was no longer a victim, but a warrior. Emily, after surviving a horrific fall at Silver Falls, escaped the dangerous area with a bruised body and a broken heart. With each step on the small path leading out of the forest, she felt not only physical pain, but also the bitterness of being betrayed by the person she once loved with all her heart. But in that pain, a glimmer of light appeared within her, a strong will to not only survive, but also to seek justice. After a few hours of walking, Emily came across a small road and flagged down an old truck. The driver, a middle-aged man named Tom, did not ask many questions, but only showed concern for her condition. Tom took Emily to a small town in the Oregon countryside, where she began to make a plan. Emily decides that Jake must not know she is alive. It is her only chance to gather evidence and expose him. Emily contacts her best friend Sarah, a 30-year-old woman who works at a law firm in Portland. When she hears Emily's voice on the phone, Sarah bursts into tears, unable to believe what she is hearing. "Emily, where are you? Do you know how worried everyone is?" Emily tearfully explains everything from Jake's scheme to the terrifying moment at the waterfall. "I need your help, Sarah," Emily says, her voice shaking but filled with determination. Sarah doesn't hesitate. She immediately drives to meet Emily and takes her to her home in Portland. In Sarah's cozy little apartment, Emily begins her journey to uncover the truth. Sarah, with her legal expertise, helps her figure out what needs to be done to build a strong case. First, Emily needs evidence. Emily remembered Jake's aggression, his abusive words, and the bruises she had tried to hide. She and Sarah began collecting everything: text messages, emails, and photos of Emily's injuries. Sarah also suggested contacting a domestic violence attorney to make sure every step they took was legal. Emily had to deal with more than just collecting evidence. Every time she looked at old photos or read Jake's messages, she felt like her heart was being ripped apart all over again. But instead of letting it weaken her, Emily used that pain as motivation. Sarah was not only Emily's legal support, but also her emotional support. She helped her friend plan out the details, from pretending to disappear, to catch Jake off guard, to finding witnesses who could confirm his abusive behavior. One day, Sarah returns to the apartment with important news. Jake has reported Emily missing, playing the role of a distressed husband searching for his wife. This news left Emily furious, but also convinced that her fake disappearance was the right move. Over time, Emily grew stronger. She realized that Jake thinking she was dead was her biggest advantage. Every day, Emily worked tirelessly to build her case against him. Photos, testimony from friends and colleagues, and Jake's emails and texts, all woven together a clear story. Jake was not only a cruel husband, but also a dangerous one. During a conversation with Sarah, Emily decided that she needed more professional help. She contacted a Portland attorney, David Harris, who had years of experience in domestic violence cases. After hearing Emily's story, David agreed to help and praised her courage. "Emily, you have a strong story and compelling evidence," he said. "Let me help you bring this person to justice." As the legal case slowly builds, Emily knows that this journey is not only about finding justice for herself, but also about showing other women that they can stand up and fight too. She wants to protect herself from Jake, but also to expose him to the world. With the support of Sarah and David, Emily is ready for the next step in her fight for justice. After months of careful preparation, Emily and her support team are finally facing their biggest challenge, Jake's trial. She is not only a 28-year-old woman who survived a murder attempt, but now a warrior fighting for justice and truth. With the support of Sarah, her best friend who has never left her side, and attorney David Harris, Emily is ready to face Jake, the man who destroyed her life but could not break her will. On the day of the trial, Emily walked into the downtown Portland courthouse with her heart pounding, but her head held high. She wore a simple black dress, not in mourning but as a statement that she had survived, that she had overcome the darkness. Jake was there, sitting at the dock, his face impassive, as if he believed he could get away with it. But when their eyes met, Emily realized that, behind his calm demeanor, Jake knew everything was falling apart. David opened his closing arguments by laying out the facts of Jake's long-term violence and attempted murder. He used carefully prepared evidence, photographs of Emily's injuries, threatening text messages from Jake, and especially the testimony of friends and co-workers who had witnessed his controlling and abusive behavior. Each piece of evidence was presented as a perfect puzzle piece, creating a clear picture of Jake's true nature, an abusive and dangerous person. When Emily took the stand, the room fell silent. She could feel everyone's eyes on her. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was strong. Emily recounted every detail of her story, from the early blissful days of their marriage, to when Jake began abusing, controlling, and eventually trying to kill her at Silver Falls. She described the panic of being pushed off the edge, the pain of falling into the icy water, and the sheer terror of having to crawl up the riverbank by herself. Jake and his attorney tried to counter. They argued that Emily had misunderstood Jake's actions, and that the fall, at the falls, was an accident. But Emily stood her ground, calmly answering every question from Jake's attorney without flinching. Every word she said, every detail she recounted, exuded undeniable honesty. After many tense days, the trial finally came to an end. David Harris took the stand to make his closing argument, emphasizing that this was not just Emily's story, but the voice of all women who had suffered domestic violence, but were unable to speak out. Emily survived, not only to tell her story, but to seek justice, he concluded. The jury then left the room, and the wait seemed to stretch on forever. Emily sat next to Sarah, her hands clasped together. She knew that no matter the outcome, she had fought hard. But deep down, she hoped that the truth would prevail. Finally, the jury returned to the courtroom. Tension was high as the judge read the verdict. Jake was sentenced to 15 years in prison for domestic violence and attempted murder. The words of the verdict sounded like a relief to Emily. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they were not tears of pain, but of relief and victory. Sarah hugged Emily, and in that moment, all the pain, all the horrible memories, melted away. As Jake was led out of the courtroom, he turned to look at Emily, but there was no fear in her eyes. She looked at him calmly, as if to confirm that he had not destroyed her. Leaving the courtroom, Emily stepped out into the bright sunlight. Outside, her friends, supporters and other women she had inspired were waiting. She knew that this was not just her victory, but the victory of all women who have endured abuse. Emily had not only survived, but emerged stronger than ever, and now she was ready to start a new chapter, one where she was no longer a victim, but a symbol of resilience and hope. After Jake was sentenced to 15 years in prison, Emily walked out of the courthouse feeling a sense of relief and freedom she had never known. The months of stress, anxiety and struggle had finally paid off. But for Emily, this was not just the end of a battle, but the beginning of a new journey, a journey to rebuild her life and help other women find their voice. When Emily returned to Sarah's home in Portland, she spent the first few days resting, but even in those peaceful moments, she knew she couldn't go back to the way things were. What she had been through was not just her story, but the voice of thousands of other women trapped in the vicious cycle of domestic violence. Emily felt a strong sense of responsibility to do something bigger, to turn her pain into strength for the community. One day, while sitting by the window, watching Portland bask in the sunshine, Emily had the idea to start an organization to help women who had been abused. She called Sarah, who immediately supported her, and pledged to join her in this project. They decided to name the organization New Beginnings, to symbolize hope and a second chance for women who had suffered trauma. In the first months, Emily and Sarah worked tirelessly to build the organization. Emily told her story in the media, did interviews, and shared her personal experiences at domestic violence workshops. Her influence quickly spread, attracting the attention of the entire community. Women from all over began to contact Emily, telling their stories, seeking support, and thanking her for giving them hope. Soon, Emily opened the organization's first center in Portland. The center is not only a safe haven for abused women, but also provides life skills classes, psychological counseling, and legal support. One of the first women to come to the center was Laura, a young mother of two, who was trying to escape her abusive husband. When Emily looked into Laura's tired but hopeful eyes, she realized that her work was truly meaningful. One day, Emily received a letter from a woman named Amanda. In the letter, Amanda wrote, "You don't know me, but your story saved my life. You showed me that it's never too late to stand up and fight. I left my abusive husband, and now I feel freer than ever." The letter brought Emily to tears. She understood that every action she took was not only to bring justice to herself, but also to be a light for those living in darkness. In addition to running her organization, Emily continues to work with journalists and government officials to raise awareness about domestic violence. She partners with larger organizations to promote policies that protect women and children, and opens centers in Seattle and Los Angeles. Despite her busy life, Emily still makes time for self-care. She often spends a peaceful morning watching the sun rise, sipping a cup of coffee, and remembering who she used to be. Emily knows that she has changed, no longer the weak, patient woman of the past, but a symbol of resilience and hope. A year later, Emily returns to Silver Falls, where it all began. She is no longer afraid of the rushing water, but instead feels proud. She carries a small box with the wedding ring that Jake gave her. Standing on the edge of the falls, Emily whispers, "Thank you for showing me how strong I am. But now, I'm ready to let go of the past." She dropped the box into the water, letting it drift away forever. Emily left the waterfall with a smile on her face. She knew her journey wasn't over. There were still many women out there who needed help, and she was determined to keep fighting. Emily's new life was not just a beginning, but a testament to the fact that, from suffering, people can find the strength to rise up and build a better future. A year after Jake was convicted and Emily founded the organization New Beginnings, her life had completely changed. From a woman who had suffered abuse, Emily had become a symbol of resilience and inspiration to many. But for her, victory was not just about exposing Jake or finding her freedom, but also about her ability to create change for other women, those who were like her. New Beginnings has grown beyond Emily and Sarah's wildest dreams. The original Portland Center is now a thriving place, not just a safe haven, but a place where many women begin their journey to recovery. Emily has opened 2 more centers in Seattle and San Francisco, with the help of grants and strong community support. Each center has the same goal: to provide comprehensive support for abused women, from safe housing to legal advice, to vocational training to rebuilding their lives. One morning, while Emily was reviewing expansion plans, she received a letter from a woman named Claire. In the letter, Claire explained that she had endured abuse from her husband for 10 years, but had not found the courage to leave. Claire had read Emily's interview in a magazine and found help. "You saved me and my children," Claire wrote. "Thanks to you, I have the courage to start over." Such letters are not uncommon, but each time Emily receives them, she can't help but cry. Not only is it a testament to the meaningful work she does, but it also reminds her of why she started this journey. She's not just fighting for herself, but for all the women who don't have a voice. However, shadows from her past still occasionally resurfaced. One day, Emily receives an anonymous threatening text message, a reminder of the terrifying days when Jake controlled her life. Although the message shakes her, Emily quickly regains her composure. She reports it to the police and works with Sarah to beef up security measures at the organization. "Jake took so much from me, but he won't take the peace I've won back," Emily tells Sarah, her eyes filled with determination. While continuing her work at the organization, Emily is invited to attend a national conference on domestic violence in Washington, D.C. It was an opportunity for her to share her story with policymakers, activists, and other organizations. On stage, Emily spoke with emotion but strength. "I was a victim, but I am no longer a victim. I am a survivor, and I am here to say that we can change, not just our lives, but the system that has let abuses go unpunished for so long." Emily's speech received a standing ovation. After the conference, she met with many people who wanted to work with her to expand the impact of New Beginnings. A large organization pledged financial support to help her open another center in Los Angeles, serving this densely populated area. When she returned to Portland after the conference, Emily spent a quiet day at her apartment, Sitting on her balcony, watching the beautiful sunset, she thought about the path she had traveled. From a woman pushed over a waterfall in a murder plot, to a leader making real change. Her journey has been arduous, but also meaningful. Emily knows that her journey is not over. There will always be women like Claire, Laura, or her old self who need help. But now she is no longer alone. She has a dedicated team, a strong community, and most of all, an unyielding will. She closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and smiles. The future is still full of challenges, but Emily knows that she is ready to face them all. New Beginnings is not just an organization, but a movement, a symbol of hope, and she will continue to fight for it. For herself, and for all the women who are still searching for light in the darkness. Emily's story reminds us that resilience and determination are key to overcoming adversity in any situation. In the face of violence and injustice, we need to recognize our own worth, not accept silence or fear. Seeking support from friends, family, or professional organizations can help us overcome difficulties and rebuild our lives. At the same time, standing up and sharing our stories not only heals us, but also inspires and gives hope to others. We need to take action, support each other, and together, create a safe, loving community. Share your thoughts on this story. What did you feel and learn from it? Don't forget to follow the channel, so you don't miss the next meaningful and touching stories about life, family, and the power to overcome adversity.